The final part of lesson 1 looks at strategic change. And we will come back to look at this later in the program as well. But for now, this is just a high level view on strategic change. So this is about changing the characteristics of the business. So this is where you've got a major impact on the business. So it may be a new strategy for the business that will involve significant change occurring. So that's what we're kind of talking about here. It's led by the company's management or the board of directors, and it could be in response to maybe a new opportunity that's being created in the external environment, or maybe a threat. So, competition have brought out something new, and therefore we need to change, and that's going to be a big change for this organization. So an example of a failed strategic change was Nokia. So some of you may remember the company Nokia at that in its height. It was the leading manufacturer of mobile phones and was the established market leader. So very, very prominent. But as smartphones, which Nokia didn't have, evolved, particularly with Apple, Nokia failed to embrace that change. So they didn't act quickly enough to develop their products in line with the new technology that was being created by the competition, and therefore didn't embrace that strategic change. They therefore fell behind, did not innovate quickly, and their market share was eroded by key players like Apple's iPhone and also Samsung as well. Okay, so that was a very high profile kind of failure because they failed to embrace the strategic change. And it shows that businesses that fail to prepare for and embrace the change will struggle to survive. That's probably at its extreme, but it can happen to many organizations. So styles of leadership for strategic change. So there's 6 styles of leadership here. So if you were going to go through a change process from a leadership point of view, there's different styles. And I'd argue that there's a kind of a scale here, starting with the first one and then ending with the final one. So the first style will be education and communication. So this is where people, and particularly employees, but maybe wider stakeholders, just don't have the information and the understanding of why the change is happening. So you need to make sure that you educate them and enable them to understand the reason for the change and the potential outcome of that change. So that's education and continuous communication. And for some people that will work. They will get behind it, they will understand it, and then they will embrace the change. The next style of leadership would be participation and involvement. So it may be possible maybe to overcome resistance by getting people involved in the process. So some people do like to get involved. So therefore, give them the opportunity to get involved. So maybe get them involved in project teams that are looking at ways for a new product to be developed or a new system to be designed within the organization or a new way of offering customer service. Whatever it is, get people involved because that's how they engage in the change. Now, some people will be happy with the first leadership style and not wish to participate. So it's another style of leadership to consider for strategic change. The third one is facilitation and support. People may be afraid of change and generally are. This style involves helping people kind of understand the change again, but also offering a lot more support to help people get through that change. So it's not necessarily their participation, it's they're uncertain, and therefore you may help them kind of get through that process. So you're facilitating and supporting that process. The fourth style is negotiation and agreement. So it may be possible to bargain with them to get their agreement. So it may also mean a compromise on what you wanted to do as an organization, but now you're in negotiating. And so you might see this sometimes with organizations that are unionized, so you are negotiating with a trade union in order to get the staff on board so as you can move on. So again, it's another way that you can manage this strategic change process. Now we're getting further away from that education and communication. So this is where you've got maybe less willing participants or employees, and therefore how do we get these less willing people through this strategic change process? So it may be that you look to manipulate them. So you offer rewards to influential people in exchange for their support. So you kind of, again, it's a bit of the negotiation, but maybe you're doing it on you've recognized or identified certain individuals that could have greater influence within the wider employee group, and therefore you will try to manipulate that in some way. They can influence others to agree and help agree to the change. And then the final style of leadership is what we call coercion. And this is where you would it's a last resort type of style, really. You would involve forcing others to change through, and if change is successful, people may come to agree with the decision. Sometimes coercion can also mean you are pushing people into a certain corner, as it were, and saying, actually, we've got to the point now where you've got to do this, or you'll lose your job, for example. That's you've gone through the other styles of leadership, but there's still some people that are not moving and not changing, and therefore you go, well, if you can't change, we're going to have to look at alternative resources there, and you may lose your job. So that's a bit of coercion as well. So as you can see with the 6 styles, when you go through a strategic change, it's not one style is the right style. You probably might have to use a little bit of several styles in order to get the strategic change process done. But it is important that leadership and the senior leaders and the strategic business leaders buy into this and don't just expect the change to happen. They need to work at it and manage that change process.